We'll get started for the City Council meeting on April 21st. Karina Tyndall will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Atkinson. Councilmember Barnes.
Present.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weil.
Here. Okay, no report from closed session. We did not have a closed session. Consent calendar.
Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar.
Anyone want
4-7.
7 other items?
4-6.
6. Members of the public, any items to be pulled? Okay, Marge, 4-6.
No, I'm 4-6.
I mean, Pete.
4-6. I guess I had some questions. This was a letter of support for funding of traffic synchronization, and I was a little puzzled by that, I guess. I could see if we were supporting traffic synchronization for buses on San Pablo Avenue, but I'm wondering whether this is such a great idea for all traffic, or will this just speed up traffic and perhaps result in more cars using San Pablo Avenue or Solano or any of the streets that it might be consigned to?
Okay.
I'm wondering if anyone else had any thoughts on that, or,
Why don't we hear from Aleida?
yeah.
Good evening, council members. Aleida Andino Chavez, and I'd be glad to clarify any questions you have. This traffic synchronization is good because we can do many things with it, and one is to keep the speed limit at whatever we want, depending on the design of the street. So if we want to keep, for instance, 30 miles per hour on San Pablo Avenue, we can actually synchronize the signals that actually allow for that speed across the corridor. So in that sense, it's a planned signal synchronization. We can do that on Marine Avenue to keep the vehicles moving at 25 miles per hour as well. Right now, we don't have signal synchronization on Marine Avenue. We actually would like to apply for a grant at MTC to implement signal synchronization and keep the speeds at 25 on Buchanan and Marine.
Okay, so is there any discussion or concern that if traffic flows more smoothly, this will increase traffic? I mean, one of the arguments for freeways is, well, if we build more freeways, the cars can get there faster, and it just seems to increase the amount of traffic.
If we want to keep everything green, then we might. But if we're going to just design the synchronization for 25 or 30 or whatever usually it's going to be 25,
Yeah.
then it's a way to manage traffic.
Okay.
So that's basically what in a way, when you have the vehicles moving, there's no congestion and there's no, and reduces emissions at a certain point. So that's why. So.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that works.
Okay. Thank you. Marge.
Yeah, this is a request by the school district to have the charter review term limits for the school board. And I found their statements a little bit sparse, but is it assumed that if the charter review looks it over, that they will come up with a more depth of why they want it.
I believe so, and also as it would be the charge of one of our advisory bodies to bring back a pro and con analysis to council so that you could make an educated decision on it. And it's one of the requests you can make this evening is that we make sure to get, a fuller picture of what they intend and what they want, why they want it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because they've always had the council and the school district with the same kind of terms. So it'd be interesting to see where there are good pros and cons for a council, even consideration. I don't know at that point. They had 4 ayes and 1 no. Do we know who the no is? Is that something that we're allowed to ask? Who voted no? Sure, thank you.
Just a second. Nicole, did you want to add anything too? Should we have you speak after Alan? Okay.
You want to go first, Nicole? Okay. First of all, I believe the charter review will decide, we'll take public input and get the pros and the cons and decide something about the language that's appropriate. But eventually, I believe this goes on the ballot. It's a change in the charter.
Yes.
So I think there will be plenty of opportunity for public input and opportunity for the council and the charter review committee to digest how the public feels about this. I was the one vote against, but I'm not voting against sending it to charter review and sending it to the public and allowing the public to vote on it. So,
well, I know that Albany passed, term limits a while back, and so it's interesting to revisit it. I know communities have done the same and revisited it. It's not always as successful as they think it was going to be because of what they're saying here with experience. So it will be interesting. So thank you for...
Yeah, to me it's a two-edged sword, whether you allow somebody to have so much experience to become entrenched and
yes.
you don't get new blood and new ideas, and so
Right,
I think it's well worth the debate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Paul?
The purview of the Charter Review Committee would specifically be to see how it relates to the city's charter as opposed to deciding the issues of the terms and how it affects the Board of Education. So really their purview may be more limited in scope, and the direction from council will need to take that into consideration and perhaps have some discussion with the Board of Education if that becomes appropriate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I forgot to say my name, I'm sorry. Alan Harris, a member of the Albany Board of Education, speaking for myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a motion about the consent calendar?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Councilmember Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Moss,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil.
Yes. Okay, that's unanimous then, that we passed that. Next.
Presentation, swearing in ceremony for disaster service workers.
CERT participants, could you please come to the front and stand in front of the city manager? Probably 2 rows. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Karina Tyndall, and I'm Albany's Community Engagement Specialist. As part of my community outreach, I teach the CERT class, which is Community Emergency Response Team. And CERT is all about giving residents the hands-on skills to respond after a disaster quickly and efficiently. As we've seen with some recent events, like the South Korea ferry that was sinking, the mudslide in Washington, you just never know when a disaster may strike, so being prepared is vitally important. You're probably looking at some of the pictures behind me. These are pictures that Peggy McQuaid took during our CERT class. It is a 24-hour course, covers fire suppression, disaster medicine, light search and rescue, and much, much more.
It is a free course, and the next one will begin in September. So anybody who's interested can contact me to register. I wanted to thank both the police department and the fire department for helping to teach some of the modules. You can see the people from both those departments teaching various units. And I also wanted to thank Peggy McQuaid. She is our only resident CERT instructor, and she's always available at a moment's notice to bake cookies or clean stuff or whatever I ask her to do. So I'm very grateful. And tonight I want to present to you the 14 graduates who have just completed our spring CERT class. So I just wanted to say a word to you. I wanted to say, graduates, thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to come to class every Tuesday throughout February and March and learn how you can be better prepared. And sometimes when you take this class, it's a little scary, and you may all of a sudden realize there are even more hazards and dangers than you ever realized. Exactly. Sometimes they bleed in class. But I wanted to reassure you that even if you felt some uncertainty and been more perplexed, that you are indeed more prepared now than ever before. So truly believe that. We're going to do two things tonight. First, we're going to have Vice Mayor Joanne Weil present you with your certificate of completion, and you can come forward when I call your name. And after that, Fire Chief Calkins will present you with, he will swear in those of you who want to be disaster service workers. So please step forward as I say your name. Sophia Acker. You can go back. Sorry. Stephanie Best. Caroline Boyden. Veronica Chin. Brett DeShepper. Jake Flaherty. Carrie Fox is not present. Eric Friedman is not present. Nathaniel Jenkins. Ann Lau. Lori McNulty. Brian Parsley. Tommy Tan. And last but not least, Barbara Williamson. We do have one person that's here tonight, and he did not complete all of the modules. So I hope that you'll join us in the fall so that we can officially graduate you. If you fill out the paperwork and are willing to be sworn in as a disaster service worker, please remain up here, and if not, please be seated. I'll turn it over to you, Chief Calkins.
Wow, this is an impressive group here. It's exciting. Thanks again for participating in our emergency preparedness for our community. I told Karina when I read it off, because sometimes it's hard to put it up on there. Otherwise, it's hard to remember when I'm speaking the exact words, but I'll go slow, but it'll be up there so you can be able to see it also. First of all, our disaster service workers are volunteers who are trained and pre-registered with the city and available to aid in the response and recovery in all phases of our disasters, should we have one. They're invaluable because they enable us to respond to many more calls for service in time of great need. I want to thank you for agreeing to be on call when the city of Albany needs you. I don't know that there's one disaster across the United States or the world that hasn't involved disaster service workers. There's just no way that first responders can do all the jobs needed, and we rely heavily upon disaster service workers, CERT members, to accomplish our task and our goals. So you're a huge part of our emergency preparedness and response. So thanks again. Okay, we're going to swear you in now. After, raise your right hand, and afterward I state your name. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. I certify, under penalty of perjury, that the foregoing is true and correct. Great. Thank you very much.
And I just wanted to say thanks again, and if anybody wants to learn more about the CERT course, please contact me, Karina, at ktindall@albanyca.org. Thank you.
Proclamation in recognition of the 18th Annual East Bay Affordable Housing Week.
Okay, Peter Moss will be reading the proclamation.
The City of Albany Proclamation in recognition of the 18th Annual East Bay Affordable Housing Week, May 9th through May 18th, 2014. East Bay Affordable Housing at 30, built to last. Whereas quality affordable housing is the foundation for health, economic stability, and educational opportunity, and whereas affordable homes are a solution to homelessness and provide support for seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities, and whereas quality affordable homes are long-term assets in their communities, contributing to public safety and community involvement, and whereas development of affordable homes close to public transit and jobs will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and strengthen the economy by providing low-income families better access to opportunities and urban amenities. And whereas rising housing costs and economic factors have led to increasing displacement, overcrowding, and homelessness that threaten our region's diversity and economic prosperity. And whereas nonprofit organizations, local jurisdictions, community organizations, and many others continue to respond to the need by providing homes and shelter for low-income people and those with special needs. And whereas East Bay Housing Organization, EBHO, is celebrating its 30th anniversary and the collective work of its 350 members to solve the affordable housing crisis and stabilize communities. And whereas East Bay Housing Organization has organized Affordable Housing Week for 18 years, and in its 30th anniversary year will feature 23 events acknowledging the need for and contributions of affordable housing. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council hereby recognizes May 9th through 18th, 2014 as the 18th Annual Affordable Housing Week in the City of Albany. Be it further proclaimed that the city will work collaboratively to secure sustainable funding and support for affordable housing at the local, regional, and state level, and will encourage residents of Albany to participate in Affordable Housing Week activities.
Hello, my name is Susan Friedland. I'm an Albany resident, and I'm also the executive director of Satellite Affordable Housing Associates. We're a nonprofit located in Berkeley that builds, owns, and manages affordable housing throughout the East Bay, and we're also a proud member of East Bay Housing Organizations. So I'm thrilled to accept the proclamation on behalf of EBHO. And I encourage Albany residents and members of the City Council, if you're interested to learn more about affordable housing work that's happening in the community, to attend one of the events of Affordable Housing Week. I believe that calendars were distributed, and I'll leave one in the back. But thanks again for your interest in and support of affordable housing.
Thank you.
City Council Strategic Plan Update. Staff recommendation that the council receive a presentation regarding implementation status of the City Council Strategic Plan and provide any feedback or direction to staff regarding the strategic plan and associated matrix.
In spring of 2013, Council went through a strategic planning process where we listed a number of goals and broke them into 4 categories. Each of those goals had metrics on how we would accomplish them, as well as a timeline. Part of that process also included checking back in with council on the status of those goals and the strategic plan 3 times per year. Nicole Amaguer is here as our city clerk and has put together a presentation for you to give you a status update and to take any further direction.
Good evening. As we wait for the slides to come up, I'd like to reiterate that this status report will be provided to council 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. So this is the first of your updates of your work of spring of last year. Staff is here tonight to respond to any questions you may have particular to a department or task. But I'll go ahead and refer to the scorecard that was developed as part of the strategic planning process. It's a 2-page document intended to hopefully be a succinct summary of status for us all. The first of the 4 themes is foster community climate action. And as part of that, we have 3 primary goals: to implement the active transportation plan, implement the climate action plan, and develop more comprehensive approach to increase pace of sidewalk repairs. In terms of implementing the climate action plan, we are in process of striping and signage projects which have been approved by the Traffic and Safety Commission. Final plans are intended to be sent to Traffic and Safety this May and anticipate a presentation to Council in June. In terms of capital implementation, I know you've had some recent presentations from the Sustainability Committee, and one of the very nice slides that the committee has prepared, which you've seen recently, identifies that we will be able to meet our strategic plan and climate action plan goal. Maybe I should just here.
It worked right up until we started.
All right, so pictures are always a nice thing to have in addition here. So let me catch up with myself. Backing up just a second, I think many of us have seen the icon down at the bottom right corner. Hopefully this is becoming familiar to you. It's our way of branding the council process, the strategic plan process, and we include it on staff reports that touch on the major themes and the projects identified in those themes. We also include it on our website, press releases, and our e-newsletter. I'm going to skip ahead. As mentioned just a moment ago, we are implementing the striping and signage. The picture on the left should be familiar. It's actually behind you here on the Buchanan improvements that were recently completed. And these are examples of bicycle boulevards and improved bike lanes. And where I left off here is the Climate Action Plan. This slide, prepared by our Sustainability Committee recently, identifies that indeed the goal of 25% emission reductions will be achieved. However, there's always a concern that that may not be enough, and so the committee and city staff are working hard to establish ongoing efforts, including a community outreach group and funding opportunities for further implementation. Sidewalk repairs we see throughout the city. Our Public Works Department is primarily leading a research to identify what other cities are doing in this area, and we'll bring that information to council with a proposed program in fall of 2014. Now, engaging our diverse community, this is an area that staff has asked for additional feedback from the council on a couple of the items. One of those is the general plan. Staff has been working hard through electronic media and public workshops and commission meetings to engage the community about the general plan. What we also want to do is identify what other opportunities we may have to reach our diverse community in terms of participation in the general plan update, including preparation of multilingual handouts and presentations at community events and also our public meetings. Another of the areas to get a little bit more feedback from council on is engaging the community in a way that celebrates diversity. And to date, the Recreation and Community Service Department has been very active in a number of different events. However, if there are other ways to achieve this goal, that would be great to hear. Moving on to the next theme, to maximize park and open space. Transition plan for the Albany bulb is certainly underway, with a lot of ongoing work and efforts in that regard. We have a grant award that we are waiting to hear from in May of 2014, which would enable a planning process to occur for the waterfront park area. We develop a plan to transition to East Shore State Park, and also transitioning of the park, making it a little bit safer for recreational use. These are some recent photos of removal of debris and materials associated with an illegal structure at the bulb. It encompassed a total of 8 dumpsters to remove the debris and materials from one campsite. Pier Street Park is another one of the goals and metrics associated with maximizing park and open space. Council has approved the 35% plans, and actually, timely this evening, you will see the 65% plans. This is the concept design that you'll get into more detail on. The next theme, promoting vital and inviting business areas. We have done some work with Complete Streets and are awaiting a grant award, which decisions will be announced in fall and winter of 2004. The grant would be to design and build enhanced pedestrian crosswalks at 6 intersections along San Pablo Avenue. Here's another picture of a complete street, not in Albany. And promoting vital and inviting business areas. Another project that was recently upheld by the City Council was the UC Village Mixed-Use Development Project. This is a schematic of what that project may look like when it is completed. Currently, implementation of that project is pending outcome of Court of Appeals ruling on the environmental impact report. And finally, the last goal in the vital and inviting business areas is parking management and how that looks in our commercial area. Again, a grant has been secured, and that will enable us to fund a parking study that is anticipated to start in the fall of 2014. So that concludes the brief presentation. Again, staff from the key departments is here, should you have any questions specifically on projects.
Marge?
I have both questions. Is there a time that we will have an update on the status of the transition of the bulb to East Bay Parks? Is that also coinciding with the May report about the grant, or how do we know what our status is in terms of working with them? It seems like a really important issue.
Well, a little later, I'm going to be giving you an update on the litigation, but separate from that, we've had some preliminary discussions with the staff at the East Bay Regional Park District about developing an MOU for how the transition would occur. The grant application would be part of that, because that would, if successful, would fund a plan for ultimately developing that as a park. So we don't have a specific timetable on those discussions. It's due in part to the pace at which the Park District is willing to proceed with those discussions.
I'm just concerned that we're prepared and able to make sure that we follow through and complete our desire to do this. Let's see. I also had, under the diverse community, since I work with teens a lot, I'm just wondering whether there's, even though we have some things for teens, there are some communities that have actual representatives of teens on committees, and we did have a committee a while back, but it wasn't very functional. And I don't know if we have any thoughts about doing that, but I'd like to think about it in terms of them meaning teens having an opportunity to learn more about what the city does and maybe even get involved. Because I know when we have, input on jobs and such, a lot of times we don't have anybody from this kind of a job, and I think that it's really something that they might be interested in, and we could recruit for the future. So anyway, I'm interested in what we're doing for teens at this point.
Michael?
Yeah. I also had questions about engaging our diverse community. Will there be, say, a booth at the Solano Stroll or possibly at the Arts and Greens Festival to talk about, say, the general plan update? And if we were to do something like that, could that be done in multiple languages? Could you have maps in Spanish, Mandarin, etc.?
I did speak with our community development director, Jeff Bond, about that, and thought it was a great idea for us to have a booth about the general plan and to have some type of survey, and so we're definitely going to be brainstorming about how we can make that happen.
Okay. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see something even expanded beyond housing is a big topic now. We just showed that our heart is in the right place by giving out an award, but I'd like to, kind of keep pushing this along, and maybe a booth dedicated to how we could increase our housing supply or what we have to do, including parking reform, might be well worthwhile.
Members of the public?
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. Brian Pursley, Albany resident. I think this is actually a great-looking plan. The one concern I have just came up actually last night. in talking about the diverse community and working with organizations within the community, one of the groups that the city has worked with recently on a number of projects, including Art and Green, Transition Albany, put out an email last night asking its membership to sign on to a petition to the university to not go forward with the University Village mixed-use project. So I think the idea that an organization that's working with the city is actually also working against the city. And I think that the council really needs to look at how it deals with certain organizations. I belong to a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We have very specific rules, what we can and cannot do. When you get into organizations that are broad-based and that fall under the umbrella of somebody else's nonprofit, they don't have any rules. We've already been burned once by an organization that's very well known in this city. And we continue to work with these organizations that time and time again prove that if they don't like it, you can't have it. And we really, if this is going to be something on the forefront of this city, we really need to look at how we deal with those organizations. The city needs a comprehensive look of how it deals with nonprofits, 501c3s, 501c4s, and redo that whole process. Because I think we're going to end up time and time again in litigation. We're going to have constant litigation. So it's something that we really need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yeah, I basically just want to say what you just said was total BS. You should listen to the transition town. You shouldn't make up all these bureaucratic rules that are basically going to make your process less democratic. I think that's pretty offensive. Obviously, you've heard me talk here a whole bunch. I don't think you should go through with evicting the bulb. I think your transition plan is extremely offensive to the lower and working class. I think that the album, we don't need a Sprouts. Sprouts is a union buster. Also, it's really, really great farmland. And, no wonder Transition Town is opposing this. It's because, to make a sustainable transition and to prepare for climate change and community resilience, you need to have self-sufficiency in that community. And I also find it really offensive that because there isn't a mobilization of people to speak out against this here, for some reason I have a whole lot more time to speak. This is kind of interesting, because every time that people come here to oppose you, and that, you cut down the time to be like a minute or two. And so that's pretty undemocratic as well, and I want to point that out, so just saying.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Julie Winkelstein, Albany resident. I wasn't going to speak, but I appreciate Brian bringing this up. I have a quote from Iris Young. In open and accessible public spaces and forums, one should expect to encounter and hear from those who are different, whose social perspectives, experience, and affiliations are different. So when Mr. Parsley calls it, that says that Transitional Albany is against us, it's actually not true. We are a city, we are a community with a lot of different views. Transitional Albany is for Albany, just like you probably think, you consider yourself for Albany, and Brian Parsley considers himself for Albany. There's not an us and a them, there's all of us. And that's what a democracy is, and it's really important to keep that in mind. And I also want to support what I don't know his name, what he just said about Transitional Albany. They are dedicated to a city that is sustainable, and bringing in large corporations is not sustainable. And I think that if you wanted to look into the future and have a far-sighted look at what Albany could look like, you could learn a lot from Transitional Albany. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Amber Whitson, still currently an Albany resident. And I was just hoping that city staff or somebody who did some analysis about this thing up here on the screen could let me know exactly what diverse means in the context of the general plan and in the context of the strategic goals, strategic plan, and in terms of engaging diverse community. You know, I'm part of a working group that's had lots of discussion about what our definition of diverse is and what exactly falls under the umbrella of diverse. And I'm just wondering if there will be any more services for low-income Albany residents, or if it's still going to be a town that has zero. Or if there's going to be, for instance, a drop-in center for people of lower incomes, or God forbid, people that are homeless in Albany. Or if it's still going to be, once May comes around and the shelter's gone, you can't be in Albany if you're homeless. I'm wondering what diverse means, if it just means people with lots of different colors, because that's not diverse, that's offensive. Or if it actually means diverse, like of all walks of life, of all disabilities, of all abilities, of all colors, of all income levels, including no income. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. All right, back to the city council then. Any feedback or direction to the staff about the strategic plan? Okay. I think things have been said already, so please incorporate those. Next item.
Go to the city public forum announcements for person desiring to address the city council on an item that's not on the agenda. Please note that city policy limits each speaker up to 3 minutes. The mayor may reduce the time limit per speaker depending on the number of speakers. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. All persons wishing to speak on an item on the agenda are to fill out speaker card. They're in the back, and you can send them in to me. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to warmly introduce Tina McKinney, our new Finance and Admin Services Director. She comes to us with nearly 20 years' experience working with local governments and finance departments, more than 20 years in the field. And we are so pleased to have her. We've had a number of times to get together and talk in terms of on the phone and one lunch just to get to know each other a little bit better. She did a fantastic job through the interview process, and I've asked her to say a few words to introduce herself to us this evening. Tina McKinney.
Thank you. Good evening, Vice Mayor, Council, City Manager, and citizens of the City of Albany. First off, I would like to say that I'm very thankful as well as honored to have been chosen for this incredible opportunity. One that I have been working toward as well as desired for some time. I would especially like to point out that I consider it an added bonus to be able to work at a city that is so community and family oriented. I'm very eager to begin working in collaboration with members of the council, Penelope, the city manager, as well as city staff, and very much look forward to contributing to the city's continued success, as it is clear that you have many excellent practices in place already, which of course only further excites me to be able to work as a public employee for such a fiscally sound organization. Finally, I would also like to acknowledge that I have had the fortunate opportunity to meet some of the staff already and have found them to be very open and welcoming, which has gone a long way toward making me feel at ease at this time of transition, during which I eagerly look forward to serving the citizens of Albany to the best of my ability. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to working here. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
Council members and members of the public, I am pleased to announce that the city has entered into a settlement agreement in the litigation that was filed contesting the city council decision to move forward with enforcement of our no camping ordinance as to the Albany bulb. I'm going to provide a brief summary of the key settlement terms. The actual settlement documentation is in the process of being finalized with a few signatures and will be available tomorrow. If anyone would like to get a copy of that, you can contact the city clerk. The key provisions of the settlement are that the city has offered a $3,000 per person relocation assistance payment to 30 of the individuals at the Albany bulb who have been involved in the litigation, also involved in some of the requests for special accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The offer was not extended to people who had already been assisted by the city in obtaining longer-term housing, which is about 10 or 12 individuals. Of the 30 people, we are waiting to hear from one individual. We're expecting 28 of the 30 will accept the offer and agree to voluntarily relocate from the Albany bulb by the end of the week. The city will be providing assistance in sorting through their property to identify items for those people who want assistance, identifying items to take with them. The city is also offering storage capacity for 120 days for individuals who may have property they're not able to take with them but want to retrieve later. And that storage is immediately adjacent to the bulb. We expect the total cost of the settlement to be under $90,000 and that will be based on preliminary calculations offset in whole or in part by other cost savings from having a more orderly process of relocating those individuals. The individuals who have accepted the settlement have agreed to stay away from the Albany bulb for a period of 12 months to provide the city with an opportunity to really change the public perception of that, to convert that into a true waterfront park that is open and accessible to all members of the public, and to also address concerns raised by the East Bay Regional Park District about ensuring that there was a long-term commitment to not permitting illegal camping there before they would consider accepting that property for incorporation into the McLaughlin East Shore State Park. The city will be partnering with the Homeless Action Center throughout this process. They're going to be essentially a financial agent dispersing the settlement funds to the individuals, assisting them with getting them into their bank accounts for those who do have bank accounts. They have already been partnering with the Berkeley Food and Housing Project to help individuals obtain ID cards and otherwise qualify for government benefits. The BFHP will continue to provide services both to bulb residents and to other homeless in Albany. Their contract is in place for a period of a year, so they will continue to provide those services. However, individuals who are receiving the settlement payment will not qualify for city financial assistance. There are other financial assistance sources available to them. There's still a good deal of work to do to implement the settlement, but it does provide a framework for a more cooperative approach to relocating individuals currently residing at the bulb. It does implement the city council policy that was established last year to enforce the no camping ordinance, but to do so in a way that is as compassionate as possible under the circumstances and involves providing of support services to individuals making that transition. And again, as mentioned in the strategic plan, this will help to facilitate continued discussions with the East Bay Regional Park District on the ultimate goal of transitioning this property into the state park system to be managed by the Regional Park District.
Thank you. Announcements from anyone else on the City Council? Okay. Any from members of the public? Comments? Good of the city? Do you have all the cards, Ann? No one filled out cards.
A card for items on the agenda. This is not on the agenda, so I didn't think I had to make. Do you want me to fill out a card?
Yeah, afterwards.
Okay. I misunderstood. I thought it was just an agenda. Julie Winkelstein, Albany resident, still. I wasn't planning to come to this meeting tonight and speak, but an email from Mr. Barnes was forwarded to me just a couple hours ago, and so I was so upset by it that I realized that I actually needed to come and say something, so that's why I'm here.
So I start out by saying, remember the saying, united we stand, divided we fall? Remember that? That's what's happened in Albany. A small group of powerful, well, powerful for Albany, not really powerful in the world probably, people have spent months denigrating, stigmatizing, and insulting people who have less political power than they do. There have been comments about their lifestyle, their activities, how dangerous they are, and even though community members have stepped forward and begged the council, begged you, to really address homelessness, to really listen to what the Bulb residents had to say, to be frugal rather than extravagant with the taxpayers' money, it has all come to this. A settlement that doesn't address homelessness, doesn't address real people's lives, in fact, further ostracizes and stigmatizes Bulb residents and basically buys people off so that they won't be in Albany, so Albany won't have to deal with our real housing issues. They'll probably be in Berkeley, in fact, and Berkeley, I'm sure, is very pleased with your agreement. But the final straw for me was Mr. Barnes calling this very favorable to the city. Which part of the city is it favorable to? That's what I want to know. This is what I was mentioning earlier. Who really wins from this? Not the people at the Bulb, not the residents of Albany, because this is a short-sighted and mean-spirited effort that in the long run only contributes to the bad financial and ethical decisions made by this council around homelessness in Albany. This shouldn't be a game with winning sides and losing sides. This should be a citywide effort to strengthen and build a true community, a community that cares. This isn't what success looks like, this is what failure looks like. The optimism that I felt when the Homeless Task Force was first formed has been long left behind. I wish that I could find the right words so that you would just see how far this is from the compassionate and caring story that you keep telling yourself. And to top it off, tonight, I couldn't believe that tonight was the night that you had this proclamation about affordable housing. I just didn't even know what to do with it. It was like a joke. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and anyway, I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Amber Whitson, Albany resident. As a recipient of HUD's Community Development Block Grant, the City of Albany is supposed to spend those funds in neighborhoods whose household median income is less than $58,000 for a three-person household. Yet, Albany put $30,000 of these funds from that grant into the Santa Fe and Marin Intersection Improvement Project, in a neighborhood with a median household income of $103,315 and an average household size of 2.48 people. In fact, I would appreciate it if staff could get back to me via email with the data that was used to reach the conclusion that CDBG funds could be justifiably spent in that neighborhood. $30,000 was the exact same amount that Albany's Homeless Task Force had requested to be able to conduct a needs assessment on Albany's homeless residents. We were denied. I'm willing to bet that nobody even questioned, let alone denied, the expenditure of CDBG funds in a neighborhood of questionable eligibility. I have been a witness to the crafting of the settlement that has been characterized as very favorable to the city, and is clearly not very favorable to the homeless residents who are being displaced. Again and again, with everything from the spending of the CDBG funds to the legislation with the drafting of the No Camping Ordinance in 1999 for the explicit purpose of ridding the city of their homeless population, in writing it says that, Albany has consistently acted in ways that would benefit its wealthiest residents while simultaneously neglecting its poorest residents. This settlement is no different. Despite the fact that a young couple who recently moved off the Bulb, who are not part of the settlement and moved into housing with the help of BFHP and Albany's Project Hope, who have a baby boy due on Mother's Day, they were stopped on 2 separate occasions by Albany police and told to not return to Albany, period. This is another example of how Albany officials treat their poorest inhabitants. I just want you to know that even though many of us will be gone, the wrongness that you do, regardless of what city we're in that you did it to, it will follow you. From us to you, it will follow you till we die. You will have still done us wrong. You will still have denied our requests for accommodations in some really foul-ass ways. You will still have legislated us out of your town, and you'll be moving forward with your park space and not your people space, but the people will still be somewhere, and the trauma will still be there of the community that you destroyed for your recreation. So just remember that when you're kicking back in your park, that was someone's home that you raised to have that park. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Okay. Next item, please.
Public hearing. Ordinance number 2014-04, amending the Albany Municipal Code, Chapter 15, Sewer and Sanitation, authorizing the city to participate in Regional Sewer Lateral Program, administered by East Bay Municipal Utility District. First reading. Staff recommendation that the council introduce for first reading ordinance number 2014-04, amending the Albany Municipal Code, Chapter 15, Sewer and Sanitation, authorizing the city to participate in the Regional Sewer Lateral Program administered by East Bay Municipal Utility District.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council. This is Public Works Director Ray Chan. What you have in front of you is the first reading of amending Albany Municipal Code, Chapter 15. This is to join the Regional Sewer Lateral Program administered by East Bay MUD. As you know, infiltration and inflow, which what we call I&I, is water that enters the sewer system through cracks and other defects in the sewer pipes. I&I can cause excessive sanitary flow during wet water event that exceed both local conveyance and regional treatment capacity. In 2009, the U.S. EPA Environmental Protection Agency filed a complaint against East Bay MUD. The objective of the lawsuit actually was to create a federal court order to force East Bay MUD to eliminate the use of the free wet weather facilities. One of the wet weather facilities is very close to us, which is at Point Isabel. The East Bay MUD lawsuit was followed by a separate lawsuit by the EPA against each one of the municipal satellite agencies. Albany was named in the lawsuit along with other satellite agencies like Alameda, Berkeley, Emeryville, Stitch, Oakland, and Piedmont. The primary objective of the lawsuit was to ensure an aggressive program to reduce wet weather flow into the wet weather facilities. East Bay MUD in 2001 and in 2011, they adopted a regional ordinance requiring the replacement of old and defective privately owned sanitary sewer lateral upon the sales of a property, and also upon whenever people upsizing their water meter. The private sewer lateral program is a significant program and has been helping to reduce a lot of I&I. In fact, more than 50% of the I&I has been coming from the private sewer lateral. It is very apparent in the old system, like the system that we have in City of Albany. The satellite agency that we are required to either have the data review show us a low Stitch, Emeryville, Piedmont, and Oakland, they already joined the East Bay MUD Regional Private Sewer Lateral Program. City of Alameda is taking action on this certificate before, but we are dedicated to administer the program, enforcing the program. The program actually will address this deficiency and also award for your consideration for the first reading for joining Regional Private Sewer Lateral Program. Thank you.
Questions, comments from the City Council?
What that might be?
Currently, they would like to replace the upper sewer lateral. They need to come in for an encroachment permit. The permit fees varies and on how the community development assess. The $300 that we mentioned in the staff report, actually, that's the because once there will be the additional fees that the property owner has to pay East Bay to monitor the program. And to answer your question, I understand there's a concern about the program and enforce the program. We do need to staff, we do need to set up the program. And chances then there's people supposed to pay East Bay Mud.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
A little confused. This is a $300 one-time pay.
What
Pay the property owners. For
yes, the
example,
property owner
owner
has to pay for. Yes, it's like go on whether they have the certificate, and each certificate lasts for about 10 years. Program, they don't have to pay anything. To join the program to get the certificate, they do need.
Okay, so for example, I bought my house in 2000 and I had it was mandatory then to have a sewer lateral inspection, and mine is
More than $100,000 to get into the program.
so I'm not in the program now.
You don't need to do anything unless it's triggered by either you sell your house or you do an upgrade remodel, which costs more than $100,000.
Okay, so let's say $8, and I still have my sewer lateral is fine. Then what happens?
Stating that your sewer lateral is fine, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to pay the $300. Is if you show you need to have someone to fix it.
I don't know, 40 or 50 years, and she has a completely decrepit sewer lateral. And the way we have this system structured now is that it's like, old cars on the street. They're the ones who really do the most of the pollution. So now there are programs to get rid of old cars.
Correct. You have a very good question. We thought about that, and actually, program, they will have to repair it, and it's been issued 10 years.
So my question is then, does the homeowner, it sounds like at some point we have to have a way to.
Before we join the East Bay Mud program, even as of right now, there will be no pipe connecting to the sewer main. So this is something, it's not a choice. They just have to do it.
The city can then force them to do it.
If it is a hazardous situation,
Yeah.
we'll have to make them to do it.
Good.
Oh, Pete? You're good?
Some of my reservations were answered in
Okay.
those questions.
Yes.
Is there a motion? Oh, pardon me, public comment?
More questions? Sorry. If it's okay, there's a statement here on page 3 that says, another change to note is the value of a building permit triggering sewer lateral testing and repair and assessed property value.
Current amount of renovation or remodel, more than 5% of the property value.
Because we're also incorporating that as being this area of play where kids would run along the top of the wall, and he had had an experience where he had tripped on one of those. So we changed the design of the wall. We're not including those as being these raised elements, but instead they're these slightly depressed elements, and you can do that in the formwork of the concrete wall. It gets done in the field instead of something that gets added on afterwards. So where does this leave us? The project, with some of these tweaks and changes since the 65% submittal, is still above the $960,000 available funds. That is the construction cost and the soft costs. The cost estimate right now with those things removed is about $950,000. The soft cost fees, which include our design, the civil, the survey, the landscape, plus utility fees and permits, and also a public art fee, is $163,000. So we're at $1.1 million. So in order to move forward, we're looking for your support for the potential for removal of some of these items or the potential for additional funding. That remains to be seen. Here's the non-expanded elements of the different categories with those numbers before you at 1.1 million. And for discussion purposes, I went through with some of what I thought would be low-hanging fruit to try to look at what you need to remove if that was the route you wanted to go. We're looking for about $150,000. I want to reiterate that these are cost estimates. They're estimates of what we think contractors will bid it, and depending on the bidding environment of when it's bid, it could go different routes. Park entry sign is about $4,000. Maybe that gets done later through a different process or in phase 2. 2 to 5-year-old children's playground fence, as I mentioned, isn't something that's required. It's something that people like because the smaller kids can't run off, is about $6,000. We have 24-inch box trees in the project, hoping to get these native tree species to take hold and survive. That's $8,200. And then we've also come in with some landscaping and some supplemental irrigation. Supplemental irrigation are little milk cartons that have a gel pack inside of them, and you put them in the ground and they slowly release water over time. For a 24-inch box tree, it's not just one little milk carton per, it's maybe 12 to 20. So it's significant, and that's about $10,000. But the biggest piece that we thought in discussions, brief discussions with city staff, is maybe look at the restroom facility. Is this something that we can come back and do later at phase 2? All told, that's $200,000 element. A lot of that is 114,000 of that is the provisions to have that building there. So not just the physical building and the installation, that's 91,000, but then the water meter and the connections for sewer, water, and electrical is 114. So I broke those down into 3 different things because I wanted you to see that you could buy the mud meter, which would have a water source at the site, and then in phase 2 that would be available. Or you could pick and choose. Well, you wouldn't install the building without the provisionals, etc. So that's where we are right now. Again, looking for more input from you about how to move forward into 95% construction drawings. And that process that we believe would be on hold until the sidewalk was determined about how the city was going to build it.
Okay, thank you. Questions and comments?
Yeah, I have a few. Can you really get the flashing beacons on the crosswalk to be fully recharged with solar panels?
Since this issue's come up, I've been looking around a lot. There's solar charged crosswalk flashing beacons right outside my office in Berkeley on Shattuck Avenue. And so they have a fairly large panel, maybe as big as this console here. And then we could put them on a pole, or they can also be on the pole with them. That was the same concern that Aleda had, whether or not they would stay lit. I think that they do, and I think we'd have enough light there because we are getting rid of some of those trees, and it'll be a different area there.
And do you have any rough estimate of what that would cost if we do it in phase 2, for example?
The solar ones? I don't think those are very expensive. I think they're a couple $1,000s each. So those are also low-hanging fruit in the other way if you wanted to put those back in. Discussions with Aleda was that could be something that was added after we investigate the built condition, and then again could be put in at any time because it isn't such a huge investment.
Any other questions?
Okay. Well, it's really nice to have this design, and it really would be nice to stay within budget in some way. It does seem like at this point that, I don't know if there are ways to cut budget before we get to this point, but I just think it's important that, we understand where we are with what we can afford. So the only thing that really looks like it's comparable to say anything is the bathroom. So I don't know if that's something we would want to do for phase 3, I guess, but what would the porta potty look like? Because it makes a difference whether it's the kind of one that's down on our bulb, which is not very good, or one like they have over at Point Isabel where it's very decent. So if you did that, it'd have to be something that people would be willing to go into, and the one down the bulb is just really not good. Is there any idea what the facility would look like as a temporary one?
We just kind of investigated that today, so I haven't looked into the types of facilities that we could get. I don't know if city staff has any input on what's at Point Isabel. and what kind of things we could
Yeah.
alter.
So, yeah,
alternatives.
I know we have some funds at some other places. I just want to be really careful that how we spend them and where is our priority. And I mean, I know we want a Pier Street Park, but I don't know if it's $200,000 extra, whether we, I guess, would have some ideas of where to get that money at some point. But anyway, thank you. That's where I'm reading.
Yeah, a couple of comments. I love the design of the synthetic turf on the playground. It's wonderful, but how much does that cost as opposed to, one color or?
For one color, the material cost isn't going to be different. The different connections of the different colors would be a perceived cost from the contractor, and if he bid it up because it was difficult to lay out.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a cost that's an unknown cost of what it would do. The image that I showed of the overhead of the little girl on the synthetic surfacing, that's in Hercules. That's a project that we did. The connections and the wear and tear of it are doing quite well after 6 years. And the cost on that wasn't over what we had estimated at the time, but that was 5 to 6 years ago.
Okay, because looking for things, if we have to start nickel and diming this project down, that might be something to consider, as wonderful as it is. It does occur to me also that if we were having to make a contribution to our art fund, things like that seem to be an in-place art example. So I know if there's art there, we may not have to be making that contribution. A question about the meadow, or I'm not sure whether this is a meadow or a all-purpose field. The hydro seeding that was described here, there's talk of lupin and poppy and other interesting things. Similar, I presume, to what they've done up on the Albany Way.
Mm-hmm. Can I clarify that? This is this area here shown in a different color, not so well on this screen right now, but this is the hydro-seeded meadow.
Oh, okay, all right.
On the hillside would have erosion control type species, including some colorful
So essentially
lupin.
more on the sloped areas
Correct.
is what we're talking
Yes.
about. Okay, so the big relatively flat area that I've always thought would be useful for kids to go out and throw a ball
Mm-hmm.
around on or whatever. I know that won't be irrigated, but is there some thought, will there be some thought to whatever is put down there that might hold up to having kids run on it or whatever?
Yes, we think it'll come back in the wet months and then last, but it will go dormant in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of hydroseed that we're using is from Delta bluegrass, and it's a native California meadow. So it's going to have some fescues, and I'm not going to be able to name them all right now, but it's basically a fescue of a native blend of grasses.
Would
And
there,
it would be shorter grass, and the city would have to mow it for it to be that type of field.
right, which is, I'm presuming, is part of the process that we will at least mow this thing.
The vision of the concept, anyway, and the documents is that the multi-use field area here, even up into here, would be mowed, and the other areas would go natural and be a naturalized hill slope.
Even though I know this is native species that you're talking about, come August, September, what do those unmowed, unirrigated areas look like? Do they become dry California hills, essentially?
Yes, it'll be the Golden Hills of California. I mean, it will go dormant.
Okay.
And the concern, I think the concern from the Parks and Rec Commission asking about hydroseed application and how we spec it, is that no matter what we do with this hydroseed type that we spec, there will be invasive weeds and things that will come into it, and so it'll start to naturalize. So that's been a concern of ours throughout the process and in presentation to you, is that it's not irrigated, so it won't have that green city park look that I think people perceive.
Right.
A couple of questions. There was John mentioned the issue of air quality and that you were going to address that later. Can you?
Yes, Jeff
mention
Bond
that?
and I have been talking about the timing of the SECRO review, and it would include air quality and noise as part of their checklist.
And finally, the bathroom issue. I think the reality is at some point we will need to have a bathroom in this park. So whether we put it in now or put it in later is not really a cost issue in the long run. So my question is there any way to find an extra $200,000 now as opposed to later to get the bathroom in now?
The only funding source we have readily available right now is Measure WW. And we've been working hard to bring down the cost as much as possible, but there's, I guess, 2 points I want to make. One is these are estimates, and as good as they are at making estimates, it all depends on what the bidding climate is. So we could really reduce this down to what exactly we have of 960 and still be faced with a decision to make if the bids come in higher than 960. So that's just something to kind of put on the back burner. Secondly is some of the soft costs were extracted by the new Public Works reorg, but you can still, there's still roughly $154,000 to cover the cost of the project. If we used Measure W, right now we have about $550,000 left in Measure WW. It was always sort of put there, and the intent was not to spend it until this project came along to see if funds were needed for that. And also, of course, the waterfront are our two biggest parks that we're looking to renovate. So the funds right now, although unallocated, I think the idea in staff's mind would be to not expend those on anything else and wait and see how these two projects come to fruition. If we dipped into Measure WW by 150, we would still have a balance of roughly 400,000 left. And just the last thing I'll add about Measure WW is it just has to be spent by 2018.
Okay, so my concern is that you can, nickel and dime a project like this, and in the long run, it doesn't really save money, it costs money, because you're doing things in a piecemeal way.
And that's a question John can answer more.
Okay, so my question is, what more are we going to know by the 95% plans? Are we going to have a better idea of alternative uses for WW money by the 95% plan stage?
Well, I think the question tonight, it could be one of two things, is if you choose not to include the bathroom, my question to John is, you would then design for a porta potty and not go to the cost of designing the actual bathroom, or are we far enough along in the bathroom that you don't need to do anything else on that?
We're far, the electrical was the real work. For civil to connect sewer and water is not that hard. So the electrical in the bathroom is pretty much figured out. That's from my sub. So what I would propose is that you do an add alternate, and so you do a bid alt of the bathroom, and you literally just take that out and put it as a bid alternative, and that'll give us that safety net that we need in the bidding environment where we can work with that. I don't like doing bid alternates unless they're sort of encapsulated and you can really say, don't do the bathroom. It's harder when you do a bid alternate that's like, do the field and don't do this and do something else. It's just, this is a pretty clean bid alternate that we would recommend.
Could you explain that a little bit more about bid alternate? So if we come in under bid or agree a good bid, and the bathroom can be put back in if we find we're in good shape, it sounds like. Or even if it's like $50,000 or $100,000 versus the $250,
Right.
It seems like it's a big enough difference that it doesn't seem such a big hit to make sure that we're ready then for the bowl, let's say, if we need that.
Mm-hmm. Was your question what is a bid alternate? How do you do that?
So does that works in our favor? It sounds like in some ways, even though you don't care for it, in terms of what we're facing right now.
Literally, you do it that way. So the restroom facility at $204,000 becomes a bid alternate, and you take that out of your cost estimate. And so the contractor bids a base bid, and then it is a riskier thing because contractors take into consideration how much you want it, and so then they'll up the bid alt.
Members of the public.
I actually have one more question for John, if you don't mind, Vice Mayor Weil. Is there anything that can be done with the plaza? Downgrading the plaza, not doing the plaza, just going right from the sidewalk to an ADA path down to the playground? Because I think as as we talked through all of this, the playground and the play structures were really, well, and so was the viewing plaza, because it's such a beautiful view, though. But is there anything that we can be doing with the plaza that would help cut costs?
With due respect, I think it's not enough for the drop in the bucket. And I think that gets to Councilmember Barnes' nickeling and diming, because you could reduce the plaza size and you'd probably save another 2,000 square feet of concrete at $10 a square foot is the way we estimate it. It's $20,000. It didn't get you far enough. And so that's why I was looking at the restroom facility as the,
okay,
as
thank
the
you.
big item.
Members of the public?
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. Peggy McQuaid, Albany resident. I think it's really exciting that this project has gotten to be this far, and one of the things that personally I really appreciate is the accessible playground. I think for all of the kids to be able to play on it is really great. I do have a real concern, though, about removing that flashing beacon, and especially with the idea that you could do it later. With a lot of people coming from the condos down the street and crossing the street, and a lot of children crossing the street, you don't want later to be after an accident. And then you're in the position of looking like, well, we made that mistake and, you know, that's unfortunate, and now you're kind of stuck. So I would really encourage you to keep the flashing beacon in there and try to make your cut someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other members of the public present. Is there a resolution?
Just a point of order, if we're going to do this alt bid process, do we need to specify that in the resolution? Or
I don't know. I don't think you need to specify that. You will be coming back with the 95% plans, and so we can refine anything at that point. But tonight, I think we're just looking for direction on any changes or modifications you would like for John to make for the 95% plans.
I think it looks good. You all right with it?
Is there a motion?
I'm not sure there is a motion here.
So is the motion that we do the staff recommendation? Or, okay, so I make a motion that, it's not really written very well, that I can do it here, so that we have reviewed the Pierce Street Park and will go forward with the 65% plans and direct staff and consultants to incorporate any desired modifications based on what we've discussed.
And it sounds like there's no real specific modifications, so really it would just be a matter of
cost, trying to keep
permitting us to move forward to 95% plans as is.
Mm-hmm. Is there a second?
Does that take care of possibility of looking at the bathroom as a separate item?
Yes.
Okay, all right then. Sounds like we need to move forward in some way here.
All right. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay.
Councilmember Atkinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watt?
Yes.
The next one is resolution number 2014.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
2014-39, approving implementation of on-street accessible parking space on Solano Avenue. Staff recommendation that the council adopts resolution number 2014-39, approving installation of 4 on-street accessible parking spaces on Upper Solano Avenue and 5 temporary on-street accessible parking spaces on Lower Solano Avenue.
Good evening. Again, I am Aleida Andino Chavez. I'm a transportation planner with the city. And before you tonight, you have a recommendation from the Traffic and Safety Commission under resolution number 2014-39, which is approving the installation of 4 on-street accessible parking spaces on Upper Solano Avenue and the formal adoption of the 5 spaces that were installed last summer on a trial basis in the Lower Solano area. The Traffic and Safety Commission has been discussing this issue of adding accessible parking on the commercial districts of the city since October 2012. At that meeting, the Commission asked staff to conduct research on the Americans with Disabilities Act requirement and about on-street accessible parking, and also to conduct research on the available parking on Solano Avenue. The research yielded information about the fact that ADA does not provide requirements for a specific number of on-street accessible parking spaces. New parking facilities in the city of Albany are subject to a combination of requirements by the ADA law and also the California Building Code. And at this time, I'll show the map in a brief moment. At this time, the city is not required to convert any of the existing on-street spaces to accessible spaces. Staff conducted a preliminary parking inventory in 2012. We show that there are 234 parking spaces on Solano Avenue from San Pablo Avenue to Ventura. 209 of these spaces are standard 90-minute parking. 23 are short-term green zone spaces, which is basically 20-minute that we have here in the city. And 2 were designated accessible parking spaces. The ADA standard for off-street or structural parking is 1 space per every 25 parking spaces. And depending on how you divide Solano Avenue, the range of needed, or let's say parking spaces that could be accessible is between 7 and 13, depending on how you divide it, if it's considered as one facility, or if we divide it by 4 different segments. In February 2013, the Traffic and Safety Commission held a public hearing on this issue to discuss the potential locations for disabled parking on Solano Avenue. 17 locations were considered from San Pablo to the Berkeley city limit under the following considerations: proximity to popular destinations, such as medical facilities, drugstores, and laboratories, adequacy of the entire path of travel, including slope of the street, curb ramps, and proximity to driveways and sidewalk condition. In addition to the technical requirements, consideration was given to the impact of accessible spaces on the parking inventory of particular blocks. Some blocks of Solano Avenue have more parking than others, and basically the assumption is that if we eliminate one from the blocks that have fewer parking spaces, the impact might be a little bit higher. The Commission directed staff to prioritize implementation of those places, and that would be located next to important destinations. So I'm going to look for this map, and I'm going to show you what we presented to the Traffic and Safety Commission. Oh, okay, here. Okay. Here's the map. The yellow squares around the locations are the ones that we identified as priority locations. And these were presented in April. Oh, okay, yeah. These were presented in April 2013, and the locations include, I'm going to move a little bit to the east of San Pablo, because I'm going to go back to the first slide here. These include parking adjacent to 1181 Solano, which is the Albany Medical Group, parking adjacent to 1234 Solano, which is the Evelyn Gardens apartments. Also, the parking at 1248 Solano, which is the Ginny Ledoux, I hope I pronounced right, and the parking adjacent, one parking spot adjacent to Flowerland. So The commission recommended installation of these 4 parking spaces on a trial basis, and we did that in the summer of 2013. At the same time, a chiropractor owner in a location west of San Pablo Avenue approached us and requested an accessible parking space at the intersection of Adams and Solano Avenue, which is basically the one that you see here. We installed this one at the same time as well. So we have not received any complaints about the use of the space, and we have observed that the spaces have good turnaround. In January, the commission moved to recommend 4 more locations in the Upper Solano area, which include 1305 Solano, near the orthodontics office at the intersection of Key Route and Solano Avenue, 1404 Solano across from a lot of restaurants, including Gordo's, 1498 Solano, let's see, 1498 Solano here, which is the medical offices near the Center for Psychological Services, and 1556 Solano, which is Gugini's restaurant. So the financial impact is about $400 per space, including the signage and the paint. We will have to maintain, refresh the paint every 2 or 3 years, depending on how faded it is. And that's my presentation. I welcome your questions.
Marge, anything from you?
So the 4 Upper Solano are the new ones,
Yes.
and the 5 lower are the ones that have been there for a while.
Yeah,
which I can't believe that we only had a couple up until this point. It seems
I know.
not very nice.
Well, the interesting is that we have the housing element. We were looking at the housing element research early with Jeff, and it's about 2,000 people with disabilities in Albany. Almost 1,000 of them are physical disabilities.
So it seems about time to start doing something like this. Have you tried to balance it between both sides of the street, or is there one side of the street that's seen better than others?
We try. One of the objectives is to have the spaces next to existing driveways in order to take advantage of the curb ramp, and also trying to locate the space on the driveway on the passenger side, because most of the vehicles, some people with disabilities drive, but most of them are passengers.
Okay, so under the staff recommendation, it has approved 4 on-street accessible parking on Upper Solano and 5 temporary on Lower Solano. So the temporary ones were a pilot program.
Yeah.
So would they stay temporary, or is that what you're asking for?
No, what I'm asking is basically formalize the permanency of the temporary
So they're really
ones.
not temporary. They're going to be 4 to finalize the 5.
Yeah.
So would the 4 on Upper then be a pilot, or would they be temporary?
I think we will be permanent, because now after almost a year that we installed the pilot program in Lower Solano, and the use has been well received. I think we can.
So do you really want temporary on street accessible parking? That's what it says here on our recommendation. So maybe it's just you want.
Maybe we should reward.
You want
So
4 above and
permanent
4 on
and
lower,
5
and then it'd be permanent. Okay, I just
Yeah.
wasn't on understanding, but make sure.
Anything else?
Everything will be permanent.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Just a quick question. These modifications don't require any expensive curb cuts, anything like that?
No, because we're trying to locate this or implement these parking spaces next to existing driveways.
So if something goes wrong, which we don't anticipate, we can always just reverse this decision?
Yes.
Okay, Pete?
You said you had gotten no really negative feedback from merchants on this, and some would like to see it. What's the process of getting the word out that this is going to happen? Are there official notifications to property owners to merchants to?
Yeah, we held in total about 4 meetings of the Traffic and Safety Commission, and for all of those meetings, we sent notifications to the property owners and the business owners.
Okay.
Anything else?
The last notification is we moved from the small postcard to the larger postcard, so.
And do you get folks coming out once they get these notifications, or are they?
Yeah, during the first meetings, we got people from Lower Solano actually attended the meeting and provided comment and feedback on that.
And you're saying the comments were primarily positive?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything opposing. I got a couple of calls of people saying, well, this is the first time some people say this is the first time I've heard about that. And I said, no, we have copies of the labels that were sent. And I explained that, the key in this map is that the yellow is priority location. Not all the ones that are suggested here will be installed right now, only the priority locations.
Right.
And it happened that it was on Lower Solano, and it was one of the trials. And then he said, then it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Members of the public? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I think I've got it here. I move that the council adopt resolution number 2014-39, approving installation of 4 on-street accessible parking spaces on Upper Solano Avenue and 5 on-street accessible parking spaces, striking the word temporary, on Lower Solano Avenue.
Good.
I'll second.
Okay, poll the council.
Councilmember Atkinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unanimous. Next.
Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Albany and Service Employees International Union, Local 1021, and updated salary schedule for city employees. Staff recommendation that Council 1, adopt resolution number 2014-41, a resolution of the Albany City Council approving the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Albany and Service Employees International Union, Local 1021, and 2, adopt resolution number 2014-42, a resolution of the Albany City Council approving an updated salary schedule for city employees.
Yes, so before you is the MOU for our SEIU Union 1021, and negotiations were finalized and they took a vote last Wednesday. All the negotiations were within the parameters of what council authorized in closed session. In the staff report, there's a highlight. It's a 4-year contract, 3% each year for 4 consecutive years. Employees that work at a higher classification will be paid at a higher rate beginning on the 2nd day. There's an increase in educational reimbursement and orthodontia, which just brings them up to other employees in the city. And vacation accrual rate changes occur 1 year sooner, which is also a benefit that's already given to other employees. And those are really the highlights of the agreement, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Let's start at the other end. Pete, questions?
No.
Michael? Good. Marge? Public? Okay, is there a motion?
Sure. I move that we adopt resolution number 2014-41, a resolution of the Albany City Council approving the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Albany and Service Employees International Union, known as SEIU, Local 1021. And also that the council adopt resolution number 2014-42, a resolution of the Albany City Council approving an updated salary schedule for city employees.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Atkinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes? Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. On to next business.
Other business reports on meetings attended, announcement of events, future agenda items.
Sure. The Senior Center's White Elephant Sale is this Saturday coming up. They always have great things, and I Hope everybody can go. And also the Arts and Green Festival is the first Sunday in May, and I hope everybody can make it to that.
Nothing new.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.